welcome back, folks. Which episode is this? I think this 123. 123, I think it is.
123, yeah.
Yeah, under the rug. Familiar faces are here. Haven't seen you guys in quite some time.
I think the
Travis
three
has
of us
been,
haven't been on the show in a while.
Yeah.
yeah, probably about a year and a half because I actually stopped both podcasts last year to focus on my business and other things. A lot of changes in my personal life, and so I wasn't doing the podcast for quite some time. But we are back. And like we were saying before we went live, I was hoping it would be under other circumstances, but nevertheless, like Travis says, this is entrepreneurship. These are the hurdles that you have to deal with when you are in business, and we are going to discuss those hurdles throughout the show and how we can get past, how we've been dealing with those hurdles thus far, and how we can further get throughout this situation and prosper in the future. But let me introduce my guest for those that may not know. We have J. Michael Phoenix. He is the founder and president, if I'm not mistaken, of Boost Academy, educational institution. And we also have Travis Miller, who is the founder of Shift to Culture. Travis, Shift to Culture still around? Still around?
Yeah, but I mean, we still popping off in the WhatsApp group and all that.
All right, cool.
We can't. Given emergency protocols, we can't do meetups or whatnot.
Right. And also the and let me make sure I get your title right. Founder of Venture Co-working.
Managing
partner. Okay.
I like that. Managing
partner of Venture Co-working, which is a co-working space there on Rosetta Street. Welcome, gentlemen. So good to see you guys once again, to talk with you guys once again. And like I said, we're going to be discussing the topic of the year, COVID-19, and how us small businesses are handling the situation. I know it's rough on everybody. A lot of businesses are probably going out of business, and some people are just trying to hold on. So I just wanted to get you guys' take on your personal experiences with your businesses. How are you dealing with it? So let's start off with you, Jay. You have an educational institution. That must be quite a task, especially not knowing when you can open up again and all of that stuff. So please tell us your experience with COVID-19 thus far.
Well, for us, we had to pivot right away to online learning, virtual learning, and it wasn't a choice. The first case that we had decided early on, the first case that was whatever got reported first, we were gonna shut down. So the first case came, we shut our doors, and we started to put systems in place. We went along with Edmodo at first. We started to tamper with Zoom. We put our schedule in place, and then the school fees started to climb up. People weren't paying. People weren't sure what was going to happen. A lot of people that were in arrears already, they used that as an extra excuse. And then a few people tried to do the right thing and said, you know what, I need to defer this, or I need a payment plan or structure plan. So we did that. We definitely kept the majority of our staff, those that were coming at the end of their contract anyway. Then we weren't planning to bring them back. We didn't. But we didn't fire anybody. We tried to do the right thing by people because this is a crisis and people need to make sure that they have security. So we did that. A few of our staff took the initiative to kind of retrain themselves to get familiarized with the new technologies, new ways to deliver education, and to get creative. We took out the COVID loan that the government threw out there. Grant was a lot because being in business, you kind of forecast your financial situation a year, 2-3 years out. So we had already been in the process of trying to get finance, and once COVID hit, it kind of made that financial situation a lot worse. And SBDC, it wasn't the best process. It was a very long process. If I had to do it over again, I think I wouldn't.
Oh, really?
Because I don't think I would. I think
that's interesting.
I think what they should do, honestly, is allow the private institutions, like, just to give more initiatives to allow you to go to private commercial banks, because a lot of them have to go through them anyway. It's a lot quicker. They don't respect timeline. Time is money, and you need to make decisions right away. So a process that could take maybe 3 weeks at max was taking 2 months, 3 months. It wasn't ideal. But now, the level of investment that you have to make to get ready for the post-COVID world, in education, face-to-face, virtual, and blended learning, that's another level of investment.
Mm-hmm.
And people are still shaky. People aren't able to go to work, secure financing. People want rebates if they have to keep their kids home, not realizing that you have to pay staff, you still have to pay rent on the building, you still have to pay extra subscriptions to make sure that they can get this virtual learning at a high level. Probably expand your bandwidth. Travis knows about those technical things. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of businesses are moving to that online space, and that carries costs.
Mm.
So I wish people would understand that just as it's challenging for you
Mm-hmm.
as an individual, but it's challenging for us because I have we have about 10 to 12 teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Those teachers have families. So when you do the multiply on the average family, say three, a person of three, that's 36 people
Mm-hmm.
that you're responsible for to make sure that they have money to go to the food store, and to make sure that, hey, you can't fold up. And I'm surprised I don't have gray hair like Minnesota Joe Biden right now.
Travis, now you in a co-working space. You have a facility that has small offices that you rent out to entrepreneurs and individuals that need office space. So how has COVID-19 affected your operation?
Listen, but it's been very rough. So like I guess the umbrella thing to keep in mind is that co-working itself is a very social business. So like,
Mm-hmm.
it is a business revolved around people, foot traffic, and people connecting, and a lot of people connecting in different ways, shape, or forms to kind of collaborate and to conduct business.
Mm-hmm.
So with COVID kind of shutting that down, it's been very interesting to see how the individual entrepreneurs in the space kind of pivot on their own. Um, the different every person in the space has a different nature of business. Some
Mm-hmm.
people actually won in COVID, depending on what their other business was. Like, for me, for
Hmm.
technology, or if you were doing delivery services. But other people who depended on foot traffic, or like, let's say if you were an educator or a tutor or whatever, like took a hit from that. So overall, it's been interesting to see um, how one could possibly pivot in a time like this, how one adopts technologies like Zoom or
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft Teams to kind of conduct business. But like that human interaction that was a core part of the space
Mm-hmm.
definitely got impacted, right? So like even for us as a company trying to figure out how to pivot, after the first lockdown, when we were able to open up a little bit, obviously we had to do, procedures and protocols that
Hmm.
dramatically reduced capacity in the space.
Right.
But people were still using the space that we found, especially those individual entrepreneurs uh, that wanted to come together, especially in a time like this, to kind of put heads together to figure out how to still talk and communicate with each other. Well, how are you doing this and how are you doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we still saw the beauty of that, but the numbers weren't the same,
Of
and you could
course.
see those like obviously dwindling down. And with the second round of lockdowns and then the spike, it's interesting too, because also it's twofold. So like the space being social, you know, it's great to have a lot of traffic, but then that's also a risk to have that traffic in the space too, especially with the virus going.
Mm-hmm.
Period, first and foremost. Um, but on the other hand, um, you still need individuals to come together and talk and put their heads together, right? Because this time is a very isolating time.
Mm-hmm.
You are not an individual who um, has a particular mindset or a toolkit that you can work from in isolation. You need people to talk to and have a conversation with, right? And
Right.
this overall landscape is just it's still unknown. You still got
Mm-hmm.
to take in a lot of data to see where we're gonna go from here,
Mm-hmm.
and then figure out what you can control first and foremost. But at the same token, you can't really plan too far ahead because we still don't know what's coming next, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's still is turmoil right now. But The word that sticks out to me, well, there's a couple words. So it's like it's for how I've been dealing with it from that business and every other business is figuring out what are the core skills I can control right now, what I need to sharpen. I find myself going back into a lot of the basics that I needed to go over. Um, Pivoting, so taking those skills in terms of figuring out what works and what doesn't, given what data you could work off with.
Mm-hmm.
But then ultimately, too, which is a thing that I think we need to talk about more too, is that sometimes it's okay to let go if you need to let go, right? So a lot of people who have spent a lot of time building these businesses right now and just aren't making it, right? There's no I mean, if you have to get to that point, there's no fault in letting go so you can gain something new, right? I think sometimes if you hold on too long to like an idea, you may not be able to open and receive what new possibilities the new landscape may be as well too. I've been contemplating that a lot, heavy in terms of
Oh, really?
yeah.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
it's weird because it's like, that has been the so it's entrepreneurship already has have a lot of risk in it just by
Mhm.
doing it and survive.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think a bigger risk that we don't kind of account for, especially until times like this, is that what if you have to let something go in order to do something new, right?
Mm.
And that's kind of a bigger conversation in terms of the pivot, which is
Okay.
Yeah,
is very
We could
that's a
definitely
part
get
of
back and dive
evolution.
into
yeah,
That's a
that.
part of the process.
yeah,
Yeah. But me personally, my situation has changed a lot
yeah,
since the last time we did a show. I think that was early last year. I think we had one location then, but
mm,
I've been a solopreneur for a bunch of years. Up until 2018, I was, doing my business from home. And since then, we've gotten two locations, and I have staff now. And so my situation is a lot different than it was, say, 3, 4 years ago.
right. Like
And
you expanded dramatically,
yes,
and you had to take
yes,
laps.
yes, we've expanded. And so a lot has changed. And I'm going to be honest, even though these are some dire times, we've been fortunate to a degree, because, well, initially we had to shut down. I think it was during the Easter time, we had to shut down for about 4 or 5 days. So everyone had to shut down, everything was closed. And so we had to shut down for that period. And then we were at least allowed to operate during the week when we used to have weekend lockdown. Saturday and Sunday nobody can open. At least we were allowed to operate, curbside takeaway delivery service and all of that stuff. So we were fortunate enough to be able to operate during that period. And so we had some revenues coming in. So it wasn't like a whole lot of people that had to close completely, like those barbershops, beauty salons, clothing stores. A lot of entrepreneurs in those fields had to close completely. And so they had zero revenue for months.
Right.
And so I just want to acknowledge that we were at least fortunate enough to have some degree of operations.
Hmm.
And that was able to allow us to still, pay the bills. We were losing a lot of money. There was no profit. We've been losing money since April,
Mm,
every month, losing
Jesus.
thousands and thousands of dollars.
mm,
However, fortunately, and that's why I thought it was interesting what Jay said about SBDC. Fortunately, I think SBDC is one of the things that the government got right, in
mm,
my opinion. The whole
Yeah,
idea,
they got that right. They did get that one right.
mm,
yeah, the whole
But they
idea
need
of the
help now.
program,
Yeah.
mm,
I think that's one of the things they got right. And luckily, we took advantage of that opportunity that was presented by SBDC, and we were
mm,
able to receive funding in terms of a loan. A lot of people think the government give you money. No, it's not to give you money. What they do is they facilitate you to get funding from banks, which are loans. You have to pay it back with interest.
mm,
But it helps,
Yeah.
especially when you need capital. If you have a growing business, capital is something that's essential.
mm,
And so we got
Hmm.
funding from not SBDC, from a banking institution through SBDC. That
Yeah.
was a big part in us being able to open our second location, which was the end of last year. And also, when COVID first hit, they also created a program for COVID-19 relief for small
Yeah.
businesses,
mm.
Hmm.
where again,
They had to pivot as themselves. as a company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and this is another thing that I think they got right. It was a good thing because as soon as it was made available, we also applied for that, and we got approved for that as well. And so those funds were
And
also go ahead.
that's a loan slash grant. That particular moment, COVID-19.
Right, right. It's
A portion of it is a
right.
grant.
Most of it is a loan, and a small portion of it, they will give you a grant. And we were able to take advantage of that as well. And so we've been on pretty decent footing in terms of being able to stay operational and pay our bills. We haven't had to defer loan payments or defer rent payments like a lot of people have because they have no income. Um, we haven't had to defer, and we still were able to keep staff on. And even to this day, where we're experiencing the second wave lockdown now, where everything is closed, now we cannot generate revenue, but we've still decided to pay our staff. Now, hopefully, this doesn't last as long because you can only do something like that for so long,
Right.
with zero revenue. Only so long you can pay people without any revenue. So hopefully, this doesn't last too long. But we've been fortunate. We're still holding on, still paying staff, and we're just kind of like everybody else, just waiting this thing out to see how long it's going to take. It's difficult with this current situation. It's difficult to pivot because you're not allowed to operate in any way, shape, or form.
It's a
You
challenge.
understand?
It's like you have to pivot, but then you need data to pivot properly.
Right.
And without certain things happening, you don't have
Yeah.
data to pivot properly.
Exactly. You don't know what's going to happen. And the thing is, on what I don't understand, and what's so frustrating for me, is that we see businesses operating like the food stores, your pharmacies and stuff. And we know the food stores have large amounts of people inside the food stores at any given time. It's a whole lot of people. And if that's something you're trying to avoid, I never understood why businesses like mine and many others that are able to operate without any contact with customers, aka your curbside, your delivery services. I don't know why we are penalized and not allowed to operate because we can still operate without even having customers inside our stores. You understand? So that was one of the most frustrating things for me because it just doesn't make sense to me. And it's putting us in a rough place because we cannot generate revenue to keep our operations going, even though we are able to do so without putting anybody at risk. You understand? So that's one of the biggest adjustments and difficulties.
So like, when I hear stuff like that too, is like I wonder if like that is a to me that is a conversation that goes towards the macroeconomics and the microeconomics of how your economy currently works, right? So I think a lot of things are happening right now. Again, it's still unknown territory. I think our government is doing the best they possibly could. They are making a few mistakes again, but that may also be aligned to like the amount of information that they are getting in that room, right? So like on your particular point, the question I would ask is that do they have somebody in the room articulating that specific need, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think
Doesn't seem so.
I don't think so.
Because if somebody was properly articulating that, then I don't think that would be an issue. I think exactly an individual will be able to do delivery or do one-on-one services.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the whole grocery store situation is just like a large umbrella because it's like it serves the greatest amount of people as possible. But again, it's overlooking the small individuals and how they work and how they may efficiently have their own risk, risk management in terms of managing that process. Maybe somebody isn't in that room, and again, the small business is the one that is, losing out on that particular degree, unless that individual knows how to work in between the orders, right? Given if they are or are not allowed to operate, right? So it's weird. So like, and I think a lot of the things for the entrepreneur itself has to look at the emergency orders, and then they have to consistently ask themselves, what context is this providing for me as a business, and then how I could pivot within those emergency orders legally.
Because there's a lot of
people that went underground. There are a lot of people that went underground.
Oh,
because again, too,
and I
it's like
can't blame them.
yeah, because again, this is where I go. This is what I meant in terms of like going from theory and put it into practice, right? It's like when we get a new update on an emergency order, the entrepreneur has to read in between the lines of what that order means and then figure out how to pivot and develop that in a business, right? If not, then you just stuck at a standstill. And at the same token, like time is going. You have to pay bills, you have to pay rent. If you have staff, you have to pay that as well too. So it's a lot of trial and error, right? And at the same token, you're still dealing with the unknown in terms of like what tomorrow is gonna bring. So like everything is like a minute to minute effect. Like the entrepreneur or the small business itself is in a war zone right now. And I think what will make or break, that's why I'm saying it's like you have to try a lot of things. And some things may actually fail, right? But be okay with the fact that if it fails, it doesn't mean a failure per se. It just means you've learned something new and then you know how to what you could possibly do for the next, round or two of tactics or strategies.
Yeah, well, I can say this is the most legal documents I've ever read in my life. I've never been one to go and read a bunch of laws, but every single order that comes out, I try and look and see, okay, how can do they have us in here? Can we operate at what capacity? And it's not been good for the past couple orders because, like I say, basically everything has been shut down except if food store, pharmacy, or medical facility, or something along those lines. And I see
Right.
someone saying here in the U.S. alone, over 110,000 small to medium businesses have closed down permanently. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is here for the Bahamas. I know I heard about what's the restaurant there? Is it Luciano?
Luciano's.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Luciano's.
Luciano's closed
yeah,
down.
Yeah,
That's
there are a lot of the businesses that are closing down and won't open back up.
yeah.
But
It's
I
a
think
reality, man.
Travis said
It's a reality.
Travis, yeah,
yeah.
Travis said it. I think there aren't a lot of people with the know-how in the room helping to guide these decisions
Mhm.
because you could obviously see that there's a disconnect between the competent authority and his cabinet, where you have business people like Tanisha Diagala and the finance minister saying, "Listen, you probably can't take another complete lockdown. It won't be good for the economy. X, Y, Z." And these people are competent from a financial standpoint.
Mhm.
So one would have thought that, hey, well, okay, this isn't going to happen, and then here we are,
Mhm.
right? I think people at this particular point, now that a lot of information is coming out, a lot of stats are being, I guess, eyed through the magnifying glass,
Mhm.
we can kind of start to make our own assessments of what risk we will take and what risk that we can take. And I think we need to allow the businesses, especially the smaller businesses, get back to work because you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Because
Yeah.
we're the people that keep this economy going.
Yes. Yes, for sure. And that was my biggest issue. Is like you cannot destroy the economy um, because of the effects of that. You understand? We employ persons, and like you said earlier, the people you employ, they have families, they have kids, and they support these people. And if we are not able to employ them, and they don't have those finances to support their families, and then you get into all kind of socioeconomic issues and all that stuff. And we already had those
Hmm.
issues prior to COVID-19.
Right.
We had a lot of issues
Yeah.
between with unemployment and the economy, and so you have to try and find a better balance because people want to work. You know what I mean? People want to work. It's only so long you can have people on welfare because government funds
I
comes from taxation. Taxation comes from the public. When
Yeah.
when people work, they pay taxes. When businesses work, they pay taxes. If those businesses and people are not allowed to work, they can't pay taxes, and the government does not have any income, and they cannot provide any kind of social safety net for people. And so they have to, at some point, recognize this is going to destroy us in the long run, and we have to get people back working and people back to business. I understand the seriousness of the situation. However, I also see the seriousness of continuing to do these
Okay.
lockdowns and curfews and not allowing people to open up and employ people and generate revenue. Um, so let's go to some, but it's so hard. I wanted to do solutions, but it's like
But
it's
There are
so difficult when
solutions.
it's
yeah,
out of your
I
hand.
mean, there are solutions, but I mean,
Okay, give me some.
I mean, I
Okay,
mean,
I'll give you one.
Yeah, well, let me just drop this in. So Greg, so yes, I agree with what you said in terms of we're in a catch-22 position where we're like, damn if you do, damn if you don't, right? But then also where the pressure is put on the entrepreneur is being creative enough where they do not become a part of the problem, and that's the challenge, right? So if
Elaborate.
so if you are a small business, right? If you just like say if you are a business that whatever your business may be, if you depend on foot traffic, right? Like your business depends on foot traffic. Yes, there is anxiousness for you to open up, but at the same token, you could also be a part of the problem with this unknown virus in terms of spread, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the onus comes on that entrepreneur. Is like, could I do could I deliver the value that I have delivered as a business in a new way that doesn't have this amount of risk that still makes me a part of the problem, right? And that is where the challenge lies, right? So you can be anxious and say, hey, let's open up again, right? But if you don't have any responsibility, not responsibility, if you don't take it upon yourself to ask yourself, how could I pivot and also to be more of a responsible business given this new context, you could be a part of the problem,
I agree.
right? I'm not
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
agree with
saying
that.
yeah, and I'm not saying that that is a pass or anything like that. That's where the difficulty and the challenge comes in terms of sitting with yourself and actually breaking down the components of your business
Well, I
in
agree.
order
I
to
think we all agree on that, and I think that applies to, like, for example, right? I've been saying even before COVID-19, I don't understand why stores like our supermarkets don't have a website where you can shop online, purchase your groceries and stuff. They have the inventory on their website where you can purchase and have a delivery
oh
service
yeah.
or something like that. Like, I've been saying that before COVID-19, but what I'm saying is
Yeah. That's a part of a bigger problem in terms of our adoption of e-commerce in general.
right,
Like
right.
it's that should have been on our to-do list from years
Yes.
ago.
Yes,
Now is
yes,
biting us in a particular
right,
degree. Can't really
right,
help it,
right,
yeah.
and some people are being forced to do that. But when I'm saying
Yeah.
in terms of no solutions, I'm talking about the businesses like mine that are not allowed to operate at all. You understand
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You're not allowed
Right.
to operate at all. There's nothing. They're not allowing you to do delivery. They're not allowing you to do
Yeah.
curbside. These low risk ways
Yeah.
of getting your goods to the customer, you are not allowed to do. So there's literally nothing you can do. You know what I mean? And in
Right.
that regard, that's what I meant when I said it's no solution in that regard, because it's complete. That is completely out of your hands.
It's a complete
Let me,
shutdown.
let
It's
me,
a
let
complete
me, let me ask,
shutdown. It's out of your
Right.
hands. Yeah.
yeah. Let me ask you this.
I get that.
And again, so like you've done the work, Greg. You've done the work prior to this, right?
Mhm.
Even to this particular point, you can make an argument in terms of why you need to be open,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So my question is that why is there not an entity within, close enough to the emergency orders that could accept your argument, right,
Mhm.
and give you a light switch approval to be like that makes sense?
Greg isn't politically connected. He is not going to bribe anybody. He's bashed enough government officials.
I
I
don't
could
watch
give you
You
a
have
government
to be
government.
laundry
politically
list
connected to have
of
a sound argument.
No, but see, you can have
bro.
an argument, but now, how far will that argument go? You can put together a nice letter, you could submit it, you could do all of that. But again, it's out of your. That's all you can do. They can either
Case in
choose
point.
to read it and then be reasonable and grant you what you may be seeking, or not. You know.
Case in point. We had been trying to figure out if we're going to do a virtual recognition ceremony or try doing it in person, right? Then we figured out that a few schools got permission because they wrote the competent authority to have the in-person ceremony as long as they could say it's social distance and they use whatever
So they made
protocols.
an
We
argument. They made
wrote,
an argument in the letter.
right? They made an argument, right? So we wrote. We got the same email address. We wrote, had the formatting, asked the competent authority. Nothing came back. Nothing came back. Nothing came back. Nothing came back. So you know what I did? I said, okay, I'm gonna rent a hall big enough. Families, if you want to come out, you can. If you don't, it's fine. but we're going to space this thing out and we're going to have an in-person service. And people came. We did what we had to do. We got out. There was no fine. And it already happened, so I wish y'all would. And no one contracted anything, and we went about our merry way. So I think reasonable, responsible business owners and entrepreneurs figure they don't want to be a part of the problem, so they're going to make whatever investments they need to make in order to serve their clients safely, because no one wants to be the place where people catch COVID. No one wants to be BPL. No one wants to be Rev. No one wants to be silent. No one wants to be that.
Police
As
force.
No.
as an institution that is trying to get back face to face, we had to make significant investment to mitigate the risk to make sure transmission is low. So when we say to our clients and our family is comfortably that we could facilitate face to face or blended learning, we feel confidently that we could do that because we made the necessary investment, and we're going to be sticklers for this thing. We're not only making an investment, and we're increasing our sanitation. We're doing the research and we're doing the things, the right things. And I think there are a lot of businesses.
Hell of expensive, everybody.
It is. It is hell of expensive, but guess what? The funny thing about it is, and I use funny because I'm really mad about it, it's the right thing to do. It's going to be with us long term. This is a 5-year thing. COVID is going to be like the flu, right? You could get your flu shot vaccine, your cold, and you still could get it every other year or whatever the case may be. So we have to learn to live with it. I use this analogy all the time. Businesses are going to have to operate like TSA after 9/11. Remember how restrictive it was to fly? It was very, very aggressive, and then they dialed things back as things progress. I think that's what's going to have to happen in industries like education, food and beverages, tech, food source, all the stuff. We have to do it, but we cannot be held back by a government because there's not the right politically connected person in that room that person respects enough to make these decisions. They have to eventually say, you know what? Okay, these are our numbers. We can mandate that you wear a mask, and all businesses allow people to wear masks. We could say that per square footage, you have to have X amount of dispensers in there. We can mandate that you have to have temperature checks, curbside where you can. Delivery service must be available, or whatever the case may be, right? We could do all those things. That's a stroke of a pen. Then we could say, you know what? Small business drives our economy. So we already have the SBDC. They've already vetted so many businesses, right? We need to expand this grant program. We need to combine that with the 52-week program, so we could kill 3 birds with 1 stone. We could inject money directly into our economy by the drivers of our economy, the small business. We could get 20,000 people employed instead of saying that when you take these grants, you could keep 51%, but you could let 49 go. No, encourage me to hire 2 people. Give me X amount up front. Give me about $50K up front, and make sure that I hire 2 people. I could show that I made their national insurance contribution over this 2 years, and give me $50K on the back end. You would have invested $200 million into your economy, into taxpayers' hands. You would have allowed people to work to provide for their families so they could spend money. You would have boosted consumer confidence. So people are shopping. You're killing 3 birds with 1 stone. You're borrowing this type of money anyway.
Jay, so a quick argument I would throw there. Not saying that this is the because if you are entrepreneur, you work in the intangibles, right? But traditionally institutions that might lend money or might be business development or whatever like that. Usually, if they give money, it has to be backed by projections of getting that money back, right? Or what the market would be, right?
We give billions of dollars away in concessions. We give our tax money away.
Yeah, but in terms of return on investment, wherever the funding may come from, you just do not know.
You don't know the ROI of putting $200 million into the cookie caterers' hands, small businesses like mine.
No,
all
listen.
These other businesses who participated. Hold on, remember the 52-week program was a success. People got
Right.
job experience. Unemployment went down, right? I'm
Mm.
saying you need to invest in your number one asset. Your number one asset is people. So
No,
you need to put it in a vehicle to hit 3 or 4 bases one time.
yeah,
You want
no,
to get reelected or you won't get reelected? Which
Travis,
one?
I think you're referring to like new businesses, like with no kind of track record or anything. Right,
exactly.
right.
No,
Even
I'm
if
not.
you are no, Greg, even if you are a new business, intangibly, you know what the return on investment is. But to communicate that to a lending institution in a time where it is all up in the air has always been a difficult challenge for any entrepreneur.
But I'm not talking coming as an independent body, you know. I'm talking about the Ministry of Finance with the vehicles that they do have. You have NIB, you have the SBDC, you have the Bahamas Development Bank, you have BOB, you have Commonwealth Bank. All these are localized institutions,
Those vehicles
right?
are trying to pivot now as well too. They don't know how to navigate in this.
No, what I'm saying is, if you go, I know people hate these 3 letters IMF. Wherever you get the money from, you're going to borrow it anyway. You're going to have to borrow a massive amount of money to cover these losses. You're already saying that you're not going to raise taxes. I don't know how you're going to do that. So that means you're going to have to borrow a massive amount of money. What I'm saying is, whatever you borrow, whether it's $500 million, $750 billion, take 200. That $200 million is spread out over a 2-year process. You vet your entrepreneurs and your businesses that have the track record, that have people employed, that have been in business, that have made a profit, that won't take the money and run to Miami and spend it. Right?
Right. Yeah.
You encourage them to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take 2 individuals and add them to my existing roster. It's very easy to vet that. National Insurance have those track records, right? Bring those 2 people in. If it's 2,000 businesses, that's 20,000 people. There are approximately 38,000 people unemployed right now. You will bring down your unemployment number, right? People won't have to stand on these long lines anymore to get assistance that's running out in September, right? They will be guaranteed a spot as long as they perform, come to work. They have a spot for 2 years, right? Providing for their family, saving, spending money, or tax, VAT, all this stuff. They paying all these things. You're making improvements to your business, Greg. You may be able to expand into another location. You may expand your delivery service and bring on more than 2 people. And then at the end of it, because you've been a good and faithful servant and you've helped the economy of the Bahamas, here's your $50K at the end of it. And you know what they could do with that same program? Rinse and repeat. If the police could get this type of money for their budget, if education and healthcare could get this type of money for their budget, the Ministry of Youth can get this type of money for their budget. The Ministry of Finance can put this into small businesses. I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of, well, that can't work because why not? Right? You already say when things up, well, it's up to the small business to do this, and put your money where your mouth is at this point.
Yeah, I could get on board with that. I agree with what you're saying. I think the early on where the disconnect was I think Jay was referring to businesses with established track records that can prove,
Right.
like you said, enough to take the money. And I think Travis, you were looking at people with ideas who want to start a new business, trying to get funding. Yeah.
No, they can get the small. They can get the smaller money because you want to encourage new businesses.
So Jay,
you still want to encourage them.
So Jay, let me ask you this then. So like, what would you say to those businesses that you know they either need to pivot or like do something new, but just does not want to let go?
If there's not one what?
Like those businesses, again, like, you know, not a proven track record, or, you know, obviously their model may not work in this particular context. What would you tell to those businesses who may be saying, oh, they deserve money too, or, you know, or feeling like they need to be open and mad and X, Y, and Z when they necessarily do not do? I'm curious to know, like, what would you tell that individual?
Okay, so what I would tell that individual is do certain things that I had to do. I had to go and get a consultant, right, to come in and say, listen, this is what you need to do. You have a great model, but you need a little bit more structure. And this is what we had to do in order to get with the SBDC. I brought in a consultant.
Yeah, SBDC actually does that, yeah.
Right? I brought a consultant and I said, okay, this is our books. This is what it is. Show me what I'm doing wrong and help me get this application done. You have to spend money to get money. That's just the way it is. right?
Yeah.
So bring in a professional, let them put your ducks in a row, and work on your business. You might not get it the first month, the second month, but if you actually want it and you actually deserve it, you're going to put in the work to get it. You might get it on the first round, you might get it on the second round. So
Right.
start your business. You have to do something and decide if you're going to actually do it. Because what we can't have is fakers putting up shell companies to get this money, and they know I ain't really trying to do nothing with it because it's a
Mm-hmm.
grant, right? The way you're paying it back is by through taxes because
Right.
I'm going to invest in my business. I'm going to have to pay this person. So the money is going to trickle around in the economy. I know we don't like the trickle down economics, but this is a way where it does happen. But you have to put it in the right people's hands. You can't allow this to be a political favor situation. It has to be done properly.
Right. And staying on that, young entrepreneurs and new business opportunities, I want to read a post by my boy Dario McKinney, who is
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur himself. And he said, young entrepreneurs, new business opportunity. Yeah, you see, I was trying to get Dario, but Dario ain't answer me. I know Dario must be too big time for me now, but I can see if I can get him on one of these days. But he says there's opportunities in establishing new business protocols in regards to COVID regulations. One is crowd control. Another is creating ticketing and numbering systems. Another is safety practices.
Mm-hmm.
Another is establishing a crowd control and organization task force that can work along with the staff of each establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to study consumer habits, store location layout, interior and exterior, and present a diagram with a plan on how you and your team can address and resolve the issue for each particular business.
Yeah.
Record your before visual data and after visual data as proof of success. Compile data online, line standing times, yes, by standing in line, versus new time after your system was implemented. Market your plan. The answer is always within the problem. And so that's Dario's way of helping people even throughout this COVID time to see the opportunity as opposed to the problem, see all of the opportunities that exist. And you can start up new businesses in a time like this. A lot of new businesses are started up in times of crisis. And so I agree, for any new entrepreneurs that want to start a business, now is the time to look at the scene and see where you can find your niche within this. How we are trying to manage this situation, you can find a niche and try to serve a need and provide value to businesses that are dealing with crowd control. I mean, we see how the stores were yesterday. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
absolute chaos at the supermarkets. Yeah,
Right.
so a business like what he described
But it
would
was
have been
great
ideal.
today. It was great today.
Yeah, it was wonderful today because
Oh
I went
yeah, it
no line,
was. It was.
no line at all.
I didn't even have to go in. I'm getting a delivery service.
Right, no line at all. But he's just pointing out that
Yeah.
this is a great opportunity for people that were sitting around because you got people that want to be entrepreneurs, but they're like, I don't know what should I do? What do I where do I fit in? Now
Right.
is the time to really look at the landscape and see what it is that you can offer that will provide value that someone will actually pay you for.
Yeah, I think in a time like this, the hardest thing, but the most important thing right now is patience and being able to sit and not do anything, but sit and take in information as it comes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's hard to do because you're antsy. You feel like you should always be doing something, especially since you're not moving around and stuff like this. But the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is to kind of watch, like consumer behavior, just like what he said, is changing right before our eyes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'll put it a high level view in my own perspective. It is hard for me to justify spending $10 on an alcoholic drink anymore.
You don't go to the club there.
But you just go in and being like buying a bottle, and
Right.
you just look at the economics of that and just realizing you don't need to go out to have fun, right?
Right.
That's just one layer of how consumer behavior is changing, right? And that ultimately impacts the type of business that provided that service or that value offering, right? So you have to follow where that is. Unless they know how to adapt and evolve with that, it's going to be a challenge, right? So how do you as an individual, right? Yes, there's a lot of anxiety, but how could you quiet, the storm in your mind, kind of be like, okay, one, I know I have a particular set of skills. Let me sharpen those skills. Two, okay, after a while, you see this is where people are going. And three, given the constraints of the orders, if you will, because you don't really know what's going to happen after it. How can I now play within this game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest challenge for everybody right now. Whether you've been working with a business and now you work home remote, or you've been thinking about starting a business and now you're not doing anything, or you have a business and you have to pivot, or you have to come with a hard decision. You probably need to close down. It's a challenging time for everybody right now, and it's still unknown. But I think ultimately, if you could focus on what can I do from on an individual level, and then branch out from there, you have a good shot in terms of figuring out what could happen next.
Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned considering or giving up on something or closing something down after a while, right? And I see a lot of people ask the question, how do I know when is it time to just let it go, let the business go? How
It,
do I know when it's that time? What is your opinion on that question? How
it's
do
a
I know when it's time to just hang
yeah,
it up?
it's a hard question, but it's something that I've been wrestling with.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I can really advise, so like I don't like a favorite book of mine is The Alchemist, right?
Okay.
By Pablo Coelho. It was one particular part of the story where early in the story, the protagonist, the main character of the story, he ends up at this kind of this glassware company, and he ended up making the company a lot of money by like putting tea in the glassware to travelers. So he would sell the tea, and then he would also sell the glassware as well too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then after a year or so, he came to the challenge of asking himself, like, because uh, he already had a plan or an idea where he wanted to go there. That the glassware store wasn't where he thought he would end up, but he
Mm-hmm.
succeeded at that particular point. But then he also realized he had a bigger thing that he wanted to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lesson in that to me is that like and we think of life being so short, or like this particular thing that I'm doing is what my life is, but it's still so broad, right? We still have a lot of time to like do a lot of different things. What we might do now may not be what we do 5 to 10 years from now, right? um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the lesson in that is that he was able to succeed in what he was doing at the moment, and then he still developed skills in that particular point in time, and
Mm-hmm.
he could take it to do anything else, right? So the lesson that means is that you might crunch the numbers, you might have you might try to come to a lot of different ideas of how to do this, and they just might not work, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that this one thing is the end of your story.
Mm-hmm.
You may need
Mm-hmm.
to evolve and adapt, right? Or you
Mm-hmm.
may need to move on this particular thing. I think we get so tied up into our identity being with this business,
Yeah.
versus our identity being fluid, and it could be multiple different things, right? Just having that confidence within yourself to realize whatever hand life may deal me, I'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, and if you are doing something and it was a really good opportunity, but it just isn't working out right now, that's not to say that it won't happen if things like you can have the opportunity to come back to it if things change again, right?
Right.
It isn't a zero sum game. Like life is dynamic and it moves. So like I think again to come to that question is that if it's meant for you and you have the skills to kind of tackle that, it'll always be there to a degree. It might evolve, it might be a different name, but don't be
Mm-hmm.
afraid to kind of move from this one thing if it means evolving into something else.
Mm-hmm. Jay,
How
how do you know when?
the indicator
Yeah,
to
how do you
give
know when
up?
to? Yeah, to let it go. To get if something just ain't working, how do you know this just ain't the thing I need to be doing?
I think you have to weigh several things. You have to weigh how what was it like before this? Like what actually happened to get it to this point? Is it pulling teeth? Do you look at it more as a chore as opposed to your passion?
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested in something else? Have you evolved as a person? Have you devolved? Is it just laziness? Like you have to weigh so many different variables.
Mm-hmm.
But if it has become a chore,
Mm-hmm.
and you no longer enjoy it because you've evolved and you have another passion or another gift that you want to pursue,
Mm-hmm.
then go ahead. It's never too late to reset.
Right.
But guess what? You're taking the experience from that
Mm-hmm.
into something new, so you won't make those same mistakes. You won't have those pitfalls. Hopefully, you're taking some capital along with you. There's no shame in that game.
Right.
right? Because there are several times I actually had to put my photo company on hold
Mm-hmm.
to build up the educational center,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I'm getting back into it now, and I do more TV than I take photos, but
Mm-hmm.
people know that my foundation has been photography,
Right. You
right?
see, Logan won't give her
So,
2 cents. I don't let the girl talk, right? I don't let the
come,
girl talk,
come.
man. She trying to give you 2 cents. She clearly feels
She said
passionately about this topic.
she definitely wants more YouTube right now. There are no monsters that live in our house, only my dad and my family.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
But yeah, like what we're doing now, what I'm doing now, the decisions that I'm making when I have to put a business on hold, scrap a business idea, and start over, is because of her and people that will come after,
Mm.
Mm.
right? Not only within my generation, my personal generation, but the entire country, because you never know what your ripple is going to do for somebody else. What
Mm-hmm.
opportunity that you give to an employee, how that's going to change their generation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be always considerate about that.
Right.
But don't be afraid of change. Change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be afraid of change.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of people that's what really stops. They're so afraid to change things. Like especially in this country, we fear change, even though change is inevitable.
I think
Change
shame
is
comes with
constant.
shame, and I think when people feel like if they have to change, I think they failed. But you have to embrace failure. Failure
Yeah.
is a
Yes.
part of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
to
Yes.
success. It's
Right.
what
Yes.
you do when you fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people try to, like you said, I'm glad you said shame because a lot of people, especially in this town, would try to shame you for doing
Hmm.
something else. It's like, oh, what happened? And you used to do this thing, or you used to do that. What
Right.
happened? You
Yeah.
can't do it no more.
But
Or you
you
fail,
all
or
mess
whatsoever.
up.
Yeah,
You all mess
yeah,
up, and
you ain't
guess
know
what?
what you want to do. It.
And then sometimes it's your own people, like your people right close to you that do it, and it hurts more,
Yeah.
which puts that added pressure for you to stick it out, to
Yeah.
prove them
Yeah,
wrong, and you're just putting energy in the wrong thing, and you just don't know to impress
yeah,
someone that really doesn't care, really.
But then
right.
also the easiest thing too is that you do it to yourself as well too, because you
Hmm.
build
Yeah,
an identity of what you think you should do, and
Yeah.
then
right.
you make a certain decision because you feel like that doesn't align with the person that you think you should be. So you
Right.
have an
Right.
internal shame as well too, and sometimes you may not even like mask it as that shame in terms of like why do I feel stuck? Because
Right.
maybe you're trying to have an argument like with yourself in terms of why you should and should not do, right? Like this
Hmm.
whole thing is a big psychological test, like for everybody. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's weird, but it's weird.
And is that one of the things that's making it so difficult for you, Travis? Because I remember you saying you're wrestling with the idea of perhaps maybe giving this thing up and moving on to something different. Is that putting so much into this one thing? Is that one of the difficult factors in holding on to it, or what are the things that what is making it so challenging for you
Yeah.
in
So
terms of making this decision?
like for me personally, like whatever it may be, personally is not a challenge for myself too, because I am very aware and comfortable of in knowing that I could bounce back and do something else, right?
Mm,
I have the skills, I have the toolkit, I could figure out what I could do from there. It is
mm,
challenging on that part. Where the challenge comes is that the beauty and the benefit of what I do and how it impacts individuals. Right?
mm,
So like
mhm.
like for in case of the space, it's still up in the air if it will survive or not. If on a personal level, I know it's okay. Whatever I do next, I'll do good at it, right?
Right.
And have long lines and have your friends waiting for a whole year for service.
Yeah.
Shit.
But where the difficulty comes is that what we provide, people benefit from it, and they have that challenge as well. Like they use that as well too, right? So it's almost like
Yeah.
not leaving them out, you know,
Yeah.
because if your brand or your product or your service is a part of that their journey for them. So that's the difficult thing. It's almost like seeing how the thing that you've built transform individuals,
Hmm.
but there's a disconnect that you can't really control because of the external console. Like you internally might be okay with whatever comes next, but you realize that individual or a few individuals may not be, right?
Hmm.
And that's what hurts. It's almost like having a kid and then seeing them do mistakes, but you can't really do anything about it. You know what I mean? Weird. It's a weird situation.
Right.
I'll tell you about a personal business that I had to definitely walk away from. I remember, I don't know if Greg, you remember when we had the photo booth, Pick Me, right?
Yeah.
We, yeah, we had it. It was a significant investment. We spent about 10,000 up front, and then after customs hit us with the it was probably about a 13,000 investment up front. One of the first to actually start that type of company. And a lot of people just popped up and got into it. It was a decent business, but one of the problems was we couldn't find someone that we could trust with that investment to kind of go to these parties on our behalf. Shaw was a charismatic one. I was a technical one. So we tried to find someone. And I was trying to get more deeper into my productions. Shaw was dealing with the school and was kind of burned out. So it became a chore. So eventually what we had to do is take out some parts, sell it for scrap, and shut it down. It was a decent business. It was making some money, especially clutch money. But at the end of the day, we just couldn't keep up with it. But we put it on the side. We sold some of the parts to other businesses that were in that particular industry, and we walked away from it and went into the school full time. You know what I mean? So it didn't take any skin off our back. Some people like, oh, you spend that type of money on that, and then da, 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 da. But at the end of the day, you
Yeah.
don't pay my bills,
Right.
right?
Right. And
You
those
you
things are gonna
don't.
happen.
Yeah. At the end of
Yeah.
the day,
Those
when
you,
you're, and especially when you're in a business and you're used to grossing, there are certain things when you hit certain marks, certain figures don't mean nothing to you anymore because you
yeah.
understand what's coming down the pipeline and what this project is going to do for you. So
That's
when
a good
people
way to
and I'm
put it.
not trying to be trivial about
No,
like
no, but
money
that's a
or
great way to
anything,
put it. Yeah,
right?
I don't.
So the way someone stresses out over a loss of 10, 15, $20,000, bro, like trust me,
Mhm.
that ain't no money. And
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. That's
So
good.
like,
Based on where you're at in your business
Yeah.
at that particular point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put it another way. So like, if someone challenges you on like, oh, you willing to walk away from X amount of dollars, is that
Hmm.
I guess, but that ain't like that's the next thing or whatever. I mean, that's just yeah, that was an investment. I could have gone to Miami with that, I guess. But like to me, I didn't put my value in that number. I put my value in what that would have done,
Right.
but
Value
not
would
Right,
have
necessarily dollars.
value would have been able
right.
to add with that money. What
Yeah,
that
correct.
Exactly.
capital investment would have been able to do for you.
Yeah,
And a lot of
and
people don't
more
see it that way.
times, right? And more times than not, you spend that money, right? And that money is long gone, but you still have the value from what you got from that investment, and it may evolve and
Exactly.
take somewhere else, right? So it's intangible, but
Right.
what a lot of people see is the tangible.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So
Right.
just
Right.
quickly to wrap up, your closing thoughts or any advice you want to leave with small business owners, entrepreneurs in a time like this, that could help them get through this rough period that we're experiencing. Just so there's something to leave them with as we wrap up. Travis?
Trust yourself. Oh,
Oh, go ahead,
Let
Jay. Go
Travis
ahead.
go
Oh, go ahead,
first.
Jay. Go ahead.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say trust yourself. Um, take the time to go over your product or service. Make the necessary adjustments. Don't be afraid to make adjustments. Don't be afraid to agitate for your company, for your employees, and for your industry. Because at the end of the day, if you sit on your thumbs and wait on them to come to you, it won't. You have to challenge. Like Greg said, as the audits came out, he was looking at the laws and figuring out, hey, can I operate in this? Find those loopholes and do it. And at the end of the day, for me, like I said, the school opening for me is right around the corner. If I feel that I'm being infringed on and I can't offer the services because y'all doing some dumbness, I'm going to get the legal and say, hey, this is what I need to do. I've seen so many other companies do it and
Mhm.
kind of operate until the judiciary can step in. Don't be afraid to fight for your dream. That's what
Mm,
I can say.
All right.
yeah, that's good, Jay. Um, like for me, like focus on the only thing you can control right now, and that's yourself, right? Like usually for me, every 6 months to a year, I find myself doing a self audit anyway. This is just sped up the time in which I've done that.
Hmm.
Really evaluating, okay, where have I come to this particular point? What is the catalog or like the collection of skills that I may or may not have learned from the last time I checked in with myself to now, what do I need to continue to develop on that is in my immediate control right now, right? That will not only help you if things go back on an uptick, you'll be better for it. If they don't, at least you know you'll be better in the meantime, right? And just for
Mm.
sanity purposes, babe. So like, try to drown out as much as the noise as possible because there's a lot of noise. More people are online than ever before, and
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
everybody has opinions. And then
Oh
the
yeah.
media and the news are just will give you anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Unplug if you need to,
Yeah.
learn something new, but focus on self, and then you have a better shot at controlling whatever may come on the outside of that. That's my biggest kind of guide. Right?
Yeah, great advice. I don't have much to add. You guys pretty much said it. But I agree with you, Travis. Especially focus on what it is you can control. Do everything in your power that you can control. I understand there are many different industries, there are many different businesses, and not everyone is in the same circumstance. It's like I felt so much for so many businesses throughout this entire pandemic, whether it be the fish fry vendors who were closed for so long and then allowed to open for a couple of weeks and then told abruptly that they have to close again. They may have bought the supplies and
All it,
all.
oh my
It's like, yeah, it's like so.
yeah,
I feel all of your pain. Like I said, that's why I started the show off with. Fortunately, my business has been fortunate, even though we've been losing thousands and thousands of dollars. I know we're still in better positions than a lot of people, and I am grateful for that. And all I can do is empathize with a lot of you businesses out there that are suffering because it's out of your hands. But I would just say, if you can, try and weather this storm for as long as you can. If you need to shut down for a while, hopefully you would have built up enough equity with your customers. And when you are able to come back, they will be right back with you. Hopefully that can
Yeah.
happen for you. But like Travis said, just focus on what you can control and stay off social media because, boy, like, yeah, that vortex will suck you in and it will have you depressed. It'll have you angry. It'll have you want to fight people.
yeah,
So do what you need to do to maintain your sanity through this period because it's hard to do, but do all you can. That's all I could say because I understand. Like I say, we're all going through it. We're all experiencing it at the same time. So do your best. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. I appreciate you. Once again, it was so good to see and talk to you guys again.
yep,
We must do this once again. Just
Yeah,
say
man.
stay safe and peace until next time.
yeah. But everybody stay safe.
Peace.
Thank you, appreciate you, boys.
Yeah.
Wash your hands,
Watch
man,
out.
and your bounty.
Later.
Peace.